Kia ora and welcome to How to Smash the Motherhood Penalty, the podcast where we get curious about a system where all parents pay some kind of a price, but it's only mothers that are paying a financial price. I'm your host, Emma McLean. I'm an executive coach and a mum of three. Join me as I interview experts in all different fields on what the motherhood penalty is, how it impacts us, and what we can do to smash it. Welcome back, it's your friend Emma, and today I am delighted to be interviewing Jane Wrightson. Jane Wrightson became the Retirement Commissioner in 2020 and is now serving her second term leading Crown entity Te Aotearoa Retirement Commission. Her other current governance appointments include Chair of CSSITO Workforce Futures Fund, Director of RNZ and member of the Charities Registration Board. Jane's executive career included stints as Chief Executive of public media funder New Zealand On Air, of the Broadcasting Standards Authority, a regulator, and of the Screen Producers Association, an industry advocacy body. Previously, Jane became New Zealand's first woman chief film censor after a decade in various programming and commissioning roles with TVNZ. She holds an MBA with distinction, a BA in literature, is a chartered member of the Institute of Directors, and is a distinguished alumnus of Massey University. Kia ora and welcome, Jane.
Hello, Emma. Lovely to see you.
I was doing a bit of research before our interview, and just in terms of your extensive media career so far, I thought that was really interesting because someone that I really admire is Gina Davis. And she set up the Gina Davis, I think it's Media Institute, where she studies the role of, how we see women in media, right? I went to see her once and she talked about, how when we have more women in different roles, they actually then get created in the world. Not the president yet, but we've done a few of those. Did you have any observations on that in your career in media around how women were portrayed in media?
The representation of women in media? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I remember doing a study about this when I was with a group called Media Women in the 80s, which tells you how old I am. And we did a study of women in advertising, and I can tell you it was all bad. And sometimes I think we've improved and sometimes I haven't. I think advertising was one thing and the media itself is another. I think local production New Zealand production is fairly aware of these things now through 30 years of consciousness raising. However, you still see extraordinary stereotypes coming from other parts of the world. And what Gina Davis has done, I saw that it was in Auckland, is amazing.
So she's inspirational.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of all this work is consciousness raising, right? You don't know what you don't know. If you don't think it, then you don't do anything. And when it's pointed out to you, particularly at the beginning, if it's pointed out gently, it encourages you to go, oh, I might be wrong about this. This is really interesting.
When you say when it's pointed out gently, what do you mean
by
that?
Start.
And what is pointing out gently? I think that's interesting.
Well, I know, and there are times where you simply have to go out on the streets and wave placards and shout. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in evidence and data, which is something my current job has taught me a great deal about. So it's pretty well say, I think this. But it's another thing to say, I think this, and it's backed up by this data. Here are the trends. Here's the facts. And here's why you can't afford to ignore it.
I love that. Yeah. Backing it up with data. And I think it's important. Yeah. And I love Gina. I saw her ages ago when Global Woman brought her out, and she was live streamed in from a Global Woman event for International Women's Day, and a phrase that I've stolen from her is she says she's an impatient optimist, and so I guess that's what I call myself as well.
Yeah, well, I like that. Yes, I would put myself in that basket as well. A little less optimistic at the moment with the way the world is going, but these things generally pass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Jane, when I say the words motherhood penalty to you, what comes up for you? What does that mean for you?
Well, it's interesting because firstly, I would say I'm an accidental mother, and being a mother has been the highlight of my life. There's no question about it. So I wanted to put that on the ground first.
Yep.
The
Yep.
second thing around the penalty is interesting. So when I became pregnant in the 90s, there was no paid parental leave. And what's more, I had started my job only about a month beforehand. So I was not popular, I can tell you. I took 6 months off, unpaid. It's 5 months actually. It's what I could afford. I ran out of money at about month 3. I'm a single mother. And my friends persuaded me to apply for the DPP. So I did with some reluctance, but that's what it's for, they said. And I said, all right, well, so it is. So that's how you get through that. Now, what that means in the long term is, for me, it's a little less important, sort of, because I was only out of the workforce 5 months. That's the thing. And by the way, this is before KiwiSaver. So at that stage, I think you would have a pension fund, because those things have kind of disappeared unless you work for the government proper, which I didn't. So normally what happens now is you take your time off. The government will now latterly put in the employer contribution for your KiwiSaver, but only if you continue contributing. And I thought that was very mean-spirited when they did that. Excellent, will cover the employer contribution. Not good, only if you continue contributing, because that's the time where your cash just disappears out of your pocket, doesn't it, for quite a while. So I think that's still an issue that needs to be solved. And then there needs to be discussions with your partners a lot, because I don't think partners understand this. You will, if you take a year out of the workforce and you haven't contributed to KiwiSaver during that time and you haven't got the contribution, you're a year behind your savings. And what that means is that the compound interest of this starts to matter. So in some ways, this is why women arrive at retirement with less than their male peers, right? It's because of the gender pay gap turning into the retirement savings gap. It's because of time out of the workforce, which generally includes mothering and also can include other caregiving. So there's all these things that you need to think about. So there's policy responses to this, and there's also personal responses, because there's agency here. You can talk about it with your partner. You can talk about it with the grandparents of the child. Is there a way that your contributions can be bolstered? As long as they know, because ignorance here is not bliss, and it really does affect people's long-term outcomes.
Yeah, when I hear you talk that back, for you, the motherhood penalty results through policy responses, but also personal responses. So, yeah, if we are partnered, talking about it with our partners.
Really, really crucial, because they may not understand. And when I talk about the savings gap, we did a piece of work on KiwiSaver last year, because I thought, all right, now KiwiSaver has been running for 20 years. There shouldn't be much difference in the savings, because everyone contributes 3%, right? And then you can see the gap starting to emerge at, get this, 21 years old. Now, just like this. And why is that? Because 3% of different salaries means you're saving less. Again,
And it adds up.
and
It's cumulative, isn't it?
it's the cumulative effect and the compounding effect of interest, which is the most important thing. And this is why data is so interesting and important, because I didn't do that. I thought we'd be kind of all right by about now, but we're not. And so you need to understand that. You need to sort of take this to the system and do what you can, like me try to. But there's also a thing around agency. If you understand this is going to happen to you, then there may be steps you can take. And those of us in executive careers have got more choices, obviously. But those of us in executive careers don't always know this. Again, so I keep putting out research reports and op-eds and all the rest of it to consciousness raise about this. Agency around this is really important.
So, when you say agency around it, and there's obviously all the work that you and your team are doing, the advocacy, the agitating for change, when you think about parents in the workforce, agency do they have with their employer? What actions could they take to get agency over what their employer's policies are?
Well, again, the hardest work has been done with the introduction of paid parental leave, right?
Yeah.
So that was a really big thing that took a long time to get across the political line. And the MPs responsible for that deserve, should take a bow, because it would have been incredibly difficult. Because guess what? It costs money. Guess what? Employers aren't always necessarily keen on more money about it, such matters.
Yeah.
But I mean by agency that it's hopeless if you sit here and feel defeated, right?
Yeah.
If you think, the system's against me, it's always going to be terrible, so therefore I won't worry. And then the natural human response is to put your head in your sand and carry on. Carry on, right? Agency means going, right, okay, I've got some choices I can make. I can talk to my employer. Maybe the employer will only give you generally the minimum. And some employers, and then it depends on your employer, right? Some employers give more generous parental leave, some don't.
Yep.
Some may take a bespoke solution. If you say this is what I need, and it doesn't mean anything else other than would be really helpful if you could. And again, some people have the ability to talk to their employers like this, and of course some don't.
Totally.
And those are the ones where you need to work really hard on a systemic response, which is why paid parental leave in particular became so important.
Yeah. In terms of the motherhood penalty, and some of the statistics I've seen around that are from some Australian numbers, so from the Grattan Institute, where they found that over 10 years from the birth of your first child, if you look at a heterosexual couple who are on pretty much the same salary when they start having their family, over 10 years, a mother's salary and retirement savings is penalised up to 55%. And a father's salary actually goes up, fatherhood bonus. Apart from parental leave, what are the other things that you see in your work that impact mothers negatively from a retirement savings perspective?
It's always about the income, right?
Yeah.
So when your income stops or reduces, then your ability to save reduces, and the compounding effect of your savings reduces. It's as simple as that. So what else can employers do? Well, apart from throwing you lots of extra money, and maybe an employer will, but they probably won't. That's why I think talking with the wider whānau becomes interesting. So, if you have grandparents or parents that are comfortable, then a conversation around that could lead to them topping up your KiwiSaver. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
There are some options, but all of it adds up to the motherhood penalty will always be there, I think. So the trick is what you do to manage it, and you can minimize it. But unless you're getting full pay for the entire time you're off, and you match your salary with your partner all the way through, which will be unlikely because you may well miss out on a promotion if you've taken the leave a couple of times for children. All of that starts to add up. And that, again, is why I talk about agency. If you understand these things will happen, firstly, you can decide whether it matters to you, and it doesn't for some people. If it does matter to you, then what choices can you have in your life?
Yeah. So planning, talking about it.
Always planning and always talking about it. As I said, knowledge is power here.
Yeah. One of the other observations I would make in my work as an executive coach working with parents is that I think another way that the motherhood penalty shows up, in addition to when you have become a parent, is as you try to navigate a growing family and all the different caregiving needs that come from that.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've observed is that one parent may need to go part-time based on the caregiving responsibilities. And if there is not part-time work available that for the career that person has a 20-year career experience in, they either off-ramp into a more junior role completely out of their career industry, and they reduce the money they're getting, which feeds into the pay gap. And that's one of the reasons why I established the New Zealand part-time power list, because I believe we need senior career building part-time roles in order to smash the motherhood penalty and the pay gap. I mean, have you seen any of that in your work around the kind of work design options that enable mothers to contribute into KiwiSaver and not just come out altogether?
Not so much on the financial front, but you're absolutely right on the caregiving front, right?
Yeah.
And again, particularly if you have more than one child. And of course, you're absolutely entitled to have more than one child. And frankly, the population base here suggests that you'd be doing the country a service, right?
Exactly. But we
Yes,
need more children. But
that's around workplace flexibility, right? And again, there's been a lot of work done in this space, particularly in the public sector, to try and encourage as much flexibility as you can. And again, this, of course, is a two-way street. You often hear single women say, I seem to be the one carrying the can between 4 and 6 as my parenting cohort disappears. And they're not entirely wrong, of course. So this again, there's a lot of common sense attached to this bit, right? I think, and a lot of awareness of the needs of the employer and the needs of your co-workers or team workers alongside your need.
Yeah.
And that's not diminishing the needs of parenting at all. It's just that there are multiple competing tensions here, as there always are. My experience of parents who work part-time and are doing all the running around is that they're generally fearsomely efficient, right?
Yeah.
Their so-called part-time job is probably full-time in somebody else's landscape, you know.
Yeah, totally.
And that's why flexibility, if you've got that kind of job, meaning you can work at nights and at weekends, that's all right to get the work done, is absolutely fine. So flexibility in your head, and then flexibility for the employer. What is the task they need you to do? When do they need it by? Do you need the input of others? If so, how are you going to do that? How are you going to manage your own exhaustion when you're running between the 4 and 7 hell hour? Let alone bussing around that you have to do.
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
It's complicated. And actually, flexibility for me is different from part-time work, because I think flexibility is, and actually Hee Jung Chung from the King's College Global Institute of Leadership has written a paper called The Flexibility Paradox. And she has said, if it's only one parent taking advantage of flexible work, it actually traps them. It actually traps them into that.
Exactly right. I haven't read that paper, but I can absolutely see the point.
Yeah, and I really am advocating for accurately scoped, deliberately designed, externally advertised senior part-time work for all genders. Because at the moment, people are allowed to work part-time. They get paid 80% of their salary and they deliver 100% of an FTE role. And I don't think that's sustainable. And I think it's a reason why mothers, particularly professional mothers, drop out of the workforce. And that's who we need staying in, I guess. So it's one of the reasons why I did the part-time power list. Jane, what do you think, what can employers do? What would you, if you were talking to employers, what's your recommendation for them in order to reduce the pay gap and motherhood penalty?
The pay gap is simply being really, really aware of and measuring their pay gap internally, because when you measure it for the first time, most people, including me and my organisation, get a bit of a shock. And you go, oh, look at that, it's there, it's real. And then the next salary round, you take a really measured and considered point of view, and you go, right, who's behind, and is there a reason for that, or is it because they were cheaper when they were hired, because they didn't ask for, what's the backstory here? So you can try and fix it through the mechanisms of pay rate.
What you measure, you manage.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And most organisations can't, especially small ones, can't ever get to a zero pay gap because the data is too wonky. But organisations up to 50, the moment I lose a man or gain a man in my organisation of 35, my pay gap does this or this. So it's not real, But the consciousness around it is real. So employers need to be very mindful about that and not resent it, by the way. And then they need to look at their female workforce and go, what kind of women have we got here? Do we have any particular needs? Are they all of childbearing age? Are they all older? Are they younger? What do we know? I think enabling them to have internal women's groups or committees or task forces is a good idea, because the women themselves can generally sort out the problem and note some solutions. And, women don't set 100% aligned on this. Who does, So getting your female workforce into the room and going, what do you think we need to do? Is there anything we could do better? Is there anything we should change? Asking for ideas and paths from the female coalface, if you like, is not stupid at all. And just being open to suggestions, right? And if the employer's in deep financial trouble, then be open about that. Right? And you can generally prove it. The women will go, well, as long as I'm not being punished any more than my male colleagues, I'll understand that. And I might not ask for what otherwise I might be thinking about asking. It's just a good, respectful conversation. It means that if the organisation has got a people lead or an HR lead in that space, they need to be really on top of all the gender and equity issues and need to have sufficient voice at the leadership table to articulate this. It puts a hell of a weight on the women senior executives, of course. Some of them might be quite conservative, some of them might not be. I don't know. We're not all the same. But trying to engage them in what I think might be issues for younger women, which will be different to the ones that we faced. That's always a good thing. And that's where a women's task force or a women's group in the organisation can be really helpful. See, there are very few magic bullets here, but most of them come from talking about it, looking at trends and going, have we got a problem here? And sometimes we'll decide we haven't. No, we can see that generally speaking, we're doing all right. Or we'll go, yes, look at the data. We absolutely seem to be having a problem. We're a bit different to, say, trends in our industry. We can see that over time our women's our pay gap is doing this rather than this. What's going on and what can we do to help?
Yeah. Measurement, curiosity, transparency, communication. Yeah.
Yeah, that.
And I mean, again, just to repeat, I think what I've heard from you is, particularly from a parental leave perspective, it would be great if employers continued to contribute to KiwiSaver while someone is on parental leave.
Well, they could at least top it up because the government's putting in the employer contribution. And
yeah.
I don't think you'd be able to do it so it was the government and the employer. I'm not sure about the rules around this.
Okay.
But if you can put it in, then the government will top you up. And if there's more topping up to be done, do a top up. You could do that.
Yeah.
Mate,
Because for me, that feels really important because of the cumulative compound effect. It's
the whole point of understanding KiwiSaver.
Exactly. And so if you're out for a year, even though that seems like a small amount, that's going to have a major sting in the tail, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we will be making representations to government soon about how about you pay contribute the employer's contribution, whether or not the woman is contributing, Why don't you do that? The costing isn't enormous, actually, when you think about how many women are on leave at one time. This is not going to break the bank.
Yeah.
And why I suspect why they pulled their punch is that we would have had somebody like a Conservative Treasury official going, I don't think we should do that. No. And so it's time to push back, And particularly with what happened with the pay equity discussions earlier this year, I think it's possible this government hopefully might be a bit open to going, well, if we're not going to run pay equity, and they got themselves what a bother about that, the next question is, well, what can you do for women workers?
That's interesting, right? That's a really good point. Like, what else can you do? And I think that would make a massive difference. It would just make a massive difference.
I know, because you sort of, I mean, if my generation, which is on the road to retirement now, I'm a young boomer. So some of us are not quite there yet. And there's all this kind of nonsense around rich boomers taking NZ Super and spending on the case of Chardonnay and all that stuff. Now there's an aspect of truth to that, which is, I reckon that's about 5% of NZ Super recipients, the top end who don't need it. And there's a big policy issue around that about whether they should be eligible or whether their eligibility should be a bit later than others. But the reason this is important is that NZ Super, which is constantly talked about, often with men in suits, saying we should put the age up. It's really simple. The country can't afford it. I frame NZ Super as a feminist issue, actually, because the majority of people on NZ Super are women. We know that 40% of current recipients of NZ Super are living on NZ Super alone, which means they've got a very modest living standard. Another 20% are living on super and a little bit more, so a little bit of savings, right? So 60% are living pretty damn modestly, right? And that 60%, a large chunk of them are women, but the majority are women. So when I hear conversations about NZ Super, I go, well, upstairs, the government, the parliament can make the decisions they want to make. Firstly, it needs to be evidence-based. Secondly, we need to look at all options, not just putting up the age, because that will harm women first. First. And thirdly, what other options could be looked at? And then fourthly, what mitigations should be made? So if you're insisting on doing it, what are you going to do to assist women in their last years, and Māori and Pacifica and manual workers? You know, you can't just do this and not expect bad things to happen. England put up their pension age very quickly a couple of years ago to 67, did it all wrong, no long runway, almost overnight, blah, 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 blah. The percentage of women that were plunged into poverty age 66 shot through the roof within the year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm imagining unintended consequences. But yeah, as you say, look, the numbers tell you what's going to happen. That's crazy. Yeah. Well, good. I hope someone's listening to you, Jane. I think that sounds very sensible.
People say, what does the commissioner do? And I say, shout into the void and hope that somebody...
Finally, if you did have a magic wand, okay, and you could change the system in the best way you think, like what's the biggest lever you would push if there were no limits to reduce or eliminate the financial penalty associated with being a mother? What do you think is the biggest lever we could push?
Find a way to pay her when she's not working. If she decides to not work for a long time, that's a very different conversation. But if she takes a year off, find a way to pay her at her same rate, be it, it might be a mixture of employer and government and partner, I don't know, but find a way to do it. If she takes off more than a year, then I think that's a completely different conversation because it becomes unaffordable in a number of ways. And then make sure that women who are having children know exactly how this is going to play out. So give them the data sources and say, this is probably how this is going to play out for you. Not all the solutions are in the hands of the employer or the government. Some of them are in your hands. And you can, again, give them agency. Give us agency. Because we're not stupid. We're not irresponsible. We're going to be working like the clappers for the next, 20 years as we raise our children. As I say, knowledge is power. Also, get rid of total remuneration, which is not just the gender thing, which is where people get their KiwiSaver included in their salary, not on top of it.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
3% or 6%.
Right.
Or, you're paying yourself, so it's hopeless.
Okay. So just for people, including myself, that have not heard that word total remuneration before, does that mean that when you get a job, the salary should be plus KiwiSaver? Right. And does that not happen right now?
It used to be mandatory to do that. We just got a piece was taken away a few years ago.
Yeah.
Some employers don't realise that they don't have to pay 3% on top. And many do. And interestingly, those in the finance sector are guilty of paying total rem. And I keep having to go at them going, you of all people should stop doing this. It's against the principle and the values of KiwiSaver, which was everybody's got a bit of a responsibility for a retirement fund here.
Yeah, love it. Jane's having a go at these people. She's not shouting into the void. She's having a go. I love that. I love that answer to the magic wand, which is we need to work out how we pay mothers while they're away and put a time limit on it. And I feel for me, it's about how we value caregiving and how we value being a parent in our society.
Always.
And I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember which country it was, and I know that there's a lot of European countries that do things a little differently, but I recently read that one of the countries, if you have mothers who have 4 children, pay no income tax for the rest of their life.
Oh, Lord, yes, I know. There are so many creative ways. And now we're saying we've got an aging population, right? And we're all hand-wringing about it. And we're saying we're going to pensions and do all sorts of things. You can encourage people to have children.
This is the thing is, we need more creativity. We need more innovation. Like, I know that sounds really disruptive, that idea, and I'm sure the talkback lines are running hot right now, but we actually need some different solutions.
We do. I don't think we need to saddle women with 10 children.
No.
And there are some cultures and religions where this is seen as a good thing. I do not agree with that at all. But it's very hard to move from 1 child to 2 and 2 children to 3. And are there ways that could be looked at? I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not thinking. The trouble is we're in a bit of a fiscal dip at the moment, and that's the trouble, right? So nobody's thinking about how to spend more money.
No.
But you can do in the middle of these dips, and they're generally dips. You can spend that time thinking quite hard about how you might change some things, or change some levers when the government's finances get back into black or get more healthy. But instead, we just can't bring about cost cutting, and thinking, say, 10 years out would be helpful, I think, in this space.
Yeah. I love that. Yes, let's use this dip for some thinking and less hand-wringing. Yeah. I like that point from Jane. Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you for sharing your time and your observations. I know so many of my listeners will have found this really enlightening, to create transparency, to ask the questions, to know what we're getting ourselves in for, to look at the data, right? To look at the data and to figure out, how can I get some agency over this? How we might want to encourage our employers to do that. It's been really interesting. Thank you so much.
Absolutely my pleasure, Emma. Thanks for the opportunity.
This podcast was funded by Works for Everyone, a business that is dedicated to supporting working parents and to smashing the motherhood penalty. If this is also your jam, let's stay connected. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for us, Works for Everyone. And if you want more information on how we help businesses put a care wrap around their employees, check us out on worksforeveryone.co.nz. Or if none of these work for you, in the weekends you can find me, Emma McLean, the founder of Works for Everyone, in the queue at Pack and Save Royal Oak or Kmart St Luke's. Onwards!